All right, so now we can add new notes and delete notes. So the final thing that we're going to take a look at here is how to modify our notes, right? So when we click on edit, in other words, and we can change the title and the actual content of the note by changing the values inside the input and text area, how do we actually make those changes be reflected in the context? Well, the basic process for this is going to be very similar to what we've seen with creating and deleting notes. The main difference here is that there's not actually going to be a modal that we have to deal with, right? It's just going to, when the user clicks on Save Changes, it's just going to save it automatically. It's not going to ask for confirmation. So the way that we're going to do this, let's open up our Note Detail page. Okay, so we'll open up Note Detail page. And then down here, when the user is editing, what we're going to need to do is make this Save Changes method that this Save Changes button calls actually save the changes in the context. Now, first of all, let's open up our note provider that's providing all this context. And essentially, we're just going to need to create a new function, just like create note and delete note, that updates the note. So we're going to say const update note equals, and this is going to take the ID of the note that we want to update, and it's also going to take the updated title and content of that note. Okay, so we're basically going to pass those things as an object, and we're just kind of destructuring them here in our function's arguments. So what that's going to look like, once we've called it, we're going to say set notes, and we've seen similar things to this before. For example, in our person tracker application, when we wanted to update a given person's information, we're essentially going to set the notes to notes.map, and we're going to map each note to itself except for the note that we want to modify, right? The note with this ID. So what that's going to look like, we're just going to say if the note's ID is equal to ID, we're going to return the updated title and content of that note. So that'll look like this. We're going to say ID, title, and content. Otherwise, we're just going to return the note unchanged by saying note. All right, and that should take care of updating the note. So let's just pass this update note function through the context so that it can be accessed by the components. We're going to say update note. And now inside our note detail page, we're going to get access to that through the use context hook by saying update note. And that will allow us to actually update the note with those changes. So all we have to do now is inside this save changes function here, before we set is editing to false, we're going to remove this alert and say update note. And we're going to call that with the ID of the note that's currently being edited, right? So this note ID thing up here that we got from the use params will do. And then we're going to pass the title and the content, but we want to pass the updated title and content. So the way we can do that is by using these two state variables here. Okay, we can say title, updated title, and content, updated content. And that should take care of updating everything for us. All right, so let's test this thing out now. We're going to go back to our application, and we're going to try and edit my new note here. We're going to change this to my old note, and we'll type in some text here that says, hello, everyone. This is a test to see if updating notes works. And let's click on Save Changes, and what we should see is all of the things that we typed in here should be saved on that note, and we should be taken back to the non-editing version of this page. So let's test and see if that's correct. We're going to click Save Changes, and sure enough, all of the data for our note was persisted. All right, and if we go back to our notes page as well, we'll see that the word count for that note has actually been updated, which is pretty cool. All right, and if we add a new note here, we can say something like hello, click create. If we go into there by clicking view, we can actually edit that and add some stuff to it. Hello there, right? Blah, blah, and click Save Changes, and we can see that those changes are persisted as well. And that pretty much completes the basic functionality we're going to need for our note application. Now, granted, we haven't added styling yet. We haven't yet learned how to display Markdown in React. There's a lot of other things we still have to do, right? Our notes are still reset if we refresh our page back to whatever this starting point was for them. And that's stuff that we'll take a look at later on. Nevertheless, we covered a lot of great topics here, so I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.